Today on Supper with Sylvia, we're taking our podcast sky high. Literally, we're broadcasting live from the beautiful Metropolitan Club on the 67th floor of the stunning Willis Tower. And I'm joined by Brooke Webster, sommelier, nightlife visionary, and ambassador for Olé and Obrigado wines. Brooke's journey is as colorful as her career, from shaping queer culture in 1990s New York with legendary spots like Meow Mix and Caddyshack, to leading acclaimed wine and cocktail programs across New York and Chicago. In this episode, we talk about her career, her journey to where she is today, and share some fun, practical wine tips. So raise your glass, savor the story, and get ready for a good time.
At Mariano's, we love how every product has a story, and some of the best stories come from right here in Chicago.
That's why we started We Love Local. It's our way of shining a light on small businesses and farmers and food makers who pour their hearts into what they do.
When you see a local item on our shelves, you know you're supporting someone's dream and keeping our community strong.
From family recipes passed down for generations to brand new ideas born in neighborhood kitchens, We Love Local brings those stories to your table. Because when local thrives, we all do.
Mariano's is a proud sponsor of the Supper with Sylvia podcast.
Welcome to our live remote podcast recording of Supper with Sylvia. Great to have you guys. This is so exciting. We are coming to you from the beautiful Metropolitan Club at the Willis Tower. Sears Tower, Willis Tower, right? For all of us old school Chicago. And today we're talking all things wine with Olé and Obrigado Wine Ambassador, Brooke Webster, and also her journey to what brought her to where she is today. So some of you may know Brooke. She often holds these amazing wine parties, and she's also a proud member of the Metropolitan Club. And for those of you who can't see, this will be on YouTube, and those of you listening on the radio, online, this room is stunning. I wish you could see it. We're here on a gorgeous fall night. The sun is going to be setting soon. The sky is just a little red. The clouds are hovering. We're on the 67th floor. It's absolutely beautiful. And we are in for a fun night. We're having an amazing multi-course dinner with wine pairings provided by Brooke. And Chef Ivan Valdez of Taquitas Valdez is doing our menu for us. So we're very excited. So, Brooke, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you, Sylvia.
So great to have you. So let's just start with this. For people who've never been here to the Metropolitan Club, tell us about this Metropolitan Club. You've been working with them, doing wine parties. You're also a member. What makes this place so special?
Well, the address is super special, but also, it's a social club and a workspace. You can even play virtual golf here, which is amazing. But it's special because it's in one of the most historic buildings in Chicago. The staff is amazing, really friendly. And for me, somebody works in different locations. If I need to stop in the middle of the day and spend, $15 on lattes and try to get the Wi-Fi to work, I'd rather come here. I work here a lot. I use the meeting space. I have events here for my clients. There is a virtual golf thing that you can play here, which is very special. But it's also an amazing social club. Like whether you're interested in wine and spirits, they have a lot of different events and mixers. And also it's a great place to network. But there's 2 floors. There's lots of places just to hang out and have events. So as a member, you get to also, have events without the room cost, which, as we know, can be a pretty hefty situation.
So thank you to the Metropolitan Club for hosting us. This is absolutely
Yes, thank
gorgeous.
you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for the staff that always is so welcoming and hardworking. We really appreciate
very
it.
Nice. Okay, full disclosure, Brooke and I are good friends, but we actually met through work years ago. It was during the pandemic, and I remember reading an article in the paper that they were bringing these domes to City Winery on the Riverwalk, which is where Brooke was managing. And I remember thinking, this is so cool. We have to have City Winery on. Nobody else at the time was doing these domes, igloos. You see them everywhere now. But when you did it, you were one of the first. You were one of the restaurants that had to pivot like so many others. What was that time like?
Yeah, I mean, we first started, I think we were the first also because we had seen someone doing this in Europe. And we were like, how do we extend this amazing season that we have in Chicago that we don't know whether in October it's going to be 75 degrees or 88 degrees or it's going to be snowing. And so it was a way to keep our staff longer. And we wanted to make them like a little living room where you could have 6 to 8 of your friends. And we designed them with all these different furniture and figured out how to nail them to the ground. But it was one of the only ways that people could get together, especially during the pandemic. There was a lot of funny things that happened in those domes that we had to deal with. You know, there was things my staff would ask me to come shut down where I'd be like, really? You two know this is completely see-through and the public is walking through here. But yeah, it was, you know, you could have 6 and 8 of your friends. It was like one cost and it was all included with big cheese board and wine bottles. And I think we celebrated your birthday in one of them.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And that was when we first became friends. So we became friends. We ended up doing a lot of stories. I'd have you on because you've been working with Olé and Obrigado now for a while. So you're a wine ambassador for these amazing Spanish and Portuguese wines, which we're going to be sampling later with our dinner. Tell everybody about the company and Olé and Obrigado, what you guys do.
So Olé and Obrigado is a Spanish and Portuguese wine importer. We have close to 200 different wines from artisan craft winemakers, mostly estate wines. So I was started 25 years ago. When one of the founder owners started, he was 19 years old. He wasn't even legal to drink in this country. And so he came here and he thought people were drinking really shitty Spanish wine. So he thought, why don't I, this is terrible. This is not a representation of what can be done. And throughout the years, he has garnered some of the best winemakers in the region. And I'm pretty honored I get to represent us in the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Midwest. And with some national groups. So I got to move from running restaurants and having really bad hours where I never really got to see my wife to working a whole lot and traveling a whole lot. But then, I actually I think it was the first New Year's Eve that I didn't have to work in something like 32 years after I started to work for Olé Obrigado. And I was like, wait a second, shouldn't I be in pre-shift, getting everybody ready and getting all the mise en place ready? Oh no, I don't have to. I actually don't have to work those hours. So it's kind of something in our industry that is, you work a long time, in restaurants or operations director or sommelier on the floor. And sometimes we get lucky and we get to work where we love all the wines that we represent and we love everything that we get to show people depending on what the price point is.
And you have such a good relationship. I truly think of this as a relationship to table because these are smaller wineries. You work directly with them. You go to Portugal and Spain. I got to go with her once, and let me tell you, it was an unforgettable trip. Like no one knows how to take you on a trip like Brooke Webster. Very special, but you become very close to these winemakers. So you almost feel maybe even a stronger commitment to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people go and pick out a wine in a grocery store and a wine store, and they don't have a connection to the winery or to the land or to the people, and maybe don't understand why this cost, right? But then when you go and see the people who are hand harvesting and all the work that goes into a bottle of wine and how passionate they feel about it, those are the wines we want to get to the consumers, right? We don't represent factory wines. We represent wines where it is either the generations of their family or it's the first generation of their family doing it, and they're working really hard to make sure that they're making something beautiful that is almost like a piece of art to me.
So Brooke has taught me to appreciate wines because, dare I tell them what I was drinking? Do you remember?
I mean, this is going to be out forever.
Okay, so one of the things Brooke used to always say to me is, don't go to the grocery store and buy those mass-produced wines. You can get some great wines and you can, get them at a good price. And I was like, what's wrong with, okay, you remember the name of it?
It was Ménage à Trois.
It was red, it was cheap, it was the pandemic. Needless to say, I've never bought that again. But I really learned how to appreciate wine. And I also learned how to appreciate why some of them are as expensive as they are, especially going out there and seeing the amount of work that's put into it. I said, I will never complain again about that, and I'll never drink that undisclosed wine again.
I think we might have gone, their stock price might have just gone down.
Right? Yeah. So, and during the pandemic, Brooke started a company on the side called Wine Fairy, and it started with just a few of us. And Brooke would deliver the wines to our homes, and then we'd all be on Zoom, and we'd do wine tastings, and that was awesome.
Yeah, I was so upset to what it first started because 3 of us got on Zoom because we hadn't seen each other because it was a shutdown. And I was like, what are you guys drinking? And they both showed me things that horrified me. And at the time, my wife was running a food pantry and I didn't know what to do with myself. I've never not worked before. Restaurants, I used to tell my parents, be proud of me because, my job is I'm always going to have work in the restaurants. And then all of a sudden I didn't have work. And I was like making her like 5 meals a day. And she was like, you can't make me breakfast and pack me lunch. And then I'm at home and you make this big dinner. So I needed something to do. Yeah. And there was no traffic. So
we were all shut in. I think a lot of people, alcohol, it was during the pandemic that I realized I like alcohol. It's good. Do you remember me telling you that?
Yes. I also remember not your daughter that's here currently, but your other daughter kind of being a little bit mad at me, thinking that I'm getting you drunk all the time.
Right? Okay, we are definitely not political in any way, but I do want to ask you, how have tariffs impacted the wine industry? How are they impacting us as consumers?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I travel a lot for work and I hear people in the airports going, I'm just going to buy California wine now. And that's not necessarily the case, right? So right now, European tariffs are 15%, but the exchange rate is also really terrible. So the importer is paying close to 30% when any of the cases our wines arrive to the border, which some importers like ours have tried to hold off raising prices on a lot of brands, but that's not going to be able to happen forever. Also, California wineries use cork. Most of the cork is grown in Portugal. A lot of glass comes from other places. It is a 3-tier system also. So there are, truck drivers, restaurant workers, everybody is affected in this economy. And so it's also intertwined that it is not going to help domestic wineries. It is going to make things more expensive for restaurants, for retailers, and for the consumers.
Are we seeing that yet?
I think we are seeing it, especially in restaurants with costs. Mm-hmm. And you're really going to see it in the first quarter. Because if anybody, of next year, because if anybody can hold off, a little bit, this by the end of this year, it's going to be very hard to hold off that much longer.
Would that impact your industry, as in your company importing Portuguese and Spanish wines? Are we going to see higher prices there?
I think you're going to see higher prices on everything, not just European wines or South American wines, wherever there's tariffs, but on the whole system itself. Because it is a 3-tier system, which means me as working for an import company, I can't sell to a distributor. Distributors are the only ones that can sell to restaurants and retailers. And the distributor cannot sell to a consumer. Only the restaurants and retailers have a license for that. So if you think about those 3 tiers, there's a lot of jobs. Yeah. There's a lot of jobs. So when people lose jobs in those tiers, they're not spending money in the economy. And so this is going to affect a lot of people. And it's also going to affect domestic wineries because of the supply chain.
Well, I don't want to make light of this, but what I'm hearing is order your cases now. Right? Get your cases
stock
now.
up before the end of the year for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a sommelier. You've been a restaurant manager. You've owned your own bar. Let's talk about that because you are celebrating a special anniversary this year. Tell everybody about your bar Meow Mix and the history behind that, because a lot of people who know you may not necessarily know the history there.
Yeah, I think people who know me in my career now don't realize maybe that I started in a dive bar that we turned into like one of the most famous lesbian and live music venues at the time. And we started in 1995. I had moved to New York and from Chicago. I'm from here, but I'd moved to New York and been like, wow, when I go out and I want to hear all different kinds of music, because I was raised on different kinds of music, I am always in a space that other people in my lesbian community are not, right? So it doesn't feel safe or out. And then when I go to the spaces that I'm supposed to hang out with my lesbian and gay community, it was the same bad pop remixes of music and culturally things that I didn't want to hear. So we kind of changed the game. And I started this night with the help of my current wife. We made $15 in flyers, and we went out and we had a Saturday night. Every Saturday night, we would have this Meow Mix night. And the idea was we weren't going to be this sort of separatist lesbian bar where only lesbians were invited, but we wanted to have the music we wanted to hear. So we would have bands in the early hour, and then we'd have DJs until 4 a.m. And the first night, there was a line down the block. And every Saturday, there was a line down the block until the current owner of the bar, and this is in the East Village, Lower East Side of Manhattan, at that time had not been overdeveloped like it is now. But the guy came to me and he was like, man, like I opened this bar. I thought it was going to be packed every night, but you're the only night that it's busy. And do you want to buy the bar from me? And for those 8 months, we took, it was $5 at the door. It was cash. So what are you going to do with this cash? I was also working another job. And so all of a sudden I was 25 years old. We bought the rest of the lease from him at that time, plus a little bit over the next 18 months for like $27,000 in cash. And I owned a bar and a liquor license, and the Lower East Side had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to bring people together. I knew how to book the entertainment, but on the other operations side, I had nothing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I learned everything the really hard way. And it became a very well-known place that was open for 10 years. And in a couple weeks, we are leaving for New York to celebrate 30-year reunion since its inception. So that was sort of my first, not my first hospitality job, but my first learn how to do everything from the bartending, bar backing, security. I DJ'd. I could put the sound system together sometimes, without help, So it was, you really learned how to be a good boss. And there was times I'm sure I was a bad boss, and I learned those lessons. But yeah, it was a historic place. Chasing Amy was filmed there. Ellen DeGeneres and Anne Heche would come in all the time and did a funny coming out thing on the first episode of Ellen. Tracy Chapman would show up and ask if she could DJ for an hour. A lot of amazing things happened there. Sleater Kinney, a band called Sleater Kinney, for people who know, they had nobody that wanted to bring them to a music festival. And so I put the money together to fly them out. And I had them play this special show with Luscious Jackson, and they played at my place, and the Beastie Boys showed up, Sonic Youth, Kathleen Hanna would hang out there. So it was just the epicenter of not only the lesbian community and like a community place, but also of live music and promoting DJs and also employing our community where people could be who they wanted to be. And this is before cell phones. So I'd get a call from Ellen DeGeneres' publicist. Okay, make sure your security checks on every single person to make sure they don't have a camera. Imagine trying to do that right now.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that happened back then, and we've been getting a lot of inquiries about pictures and why we don't have more pictures, because, also people weren't that out back then, and being right now National Coming Out Day, the visibility today, I know in podcast land it's not October 11th, but October 11th has been National Coming Out Day since 1989. And it's really important, visibility in our community saves lives, and having a place for people to go. I know that we saved lives. People got married, they broke up, they met each other, they were lifelong friends. So it was pretty special and epic to be open for 10 years in Manhattan.
Wow. And now the fact that they're celebrating it, that was something that kind of surprised you. They came to you, right? And said, let's do this.
Well, last year, there's a wine bar, another very well-known sommelier who was also a lesbian. She asked to do a tribute to Meow Mix and what it meant to her. And then I started realizing, oh God, all these people, it meant so much to them. And we've lost a couple of people in the last couple of years. And, we now more than ever, we need to get together. Our community is under attack, and we are also feeling that our history might be erased. And so one of the objectives of it's 4 days. Sometimes there's 2 shows a night. There's going to be a lot of things happening. A block and a half away from the original location. They're going to change the sign outside, which is pretty cool. But we're raising money for the Lesbian Her Story Archives, which is really important in preserving our history. And the Trans Oral Project also is a history project. We thought those were 2 organizations that really needed our support right now.
Well, you've always been somebody who is always trying to help people no matter who they are. And I think that that history of yours just shows who you are today, Brooke. Because one of the things I love about her is when I was drinking that, she never made me feel like, what are you doing or why would you drink that? You're always very good about telling people, yes, it's your palate. You should be able to enjoy what you want. But why not try this, right? So I want to get some helpful tips from you to share. Okay. How many of you are big wine drinkers? Raise your hand. Okay. Of course. Yes. How many of you consider yourselves novices? Yes. Okay. So we're going to a restaurant, Brooke. And I go out of state and I'll take video of a place that I'm at and send it to Brooke and say, which one of these should I buy? But we're going to a restaurant and we are not familiar with any of the bottles that are on the menu. We don't know what to do. So where do you begin? Do you go for the cheapest bottle? Is more expensive going to be more delicious? What do you tell people?
I mean, I think it really depends on the place. Like sommeliers have a lot of different jobs in the industry, right? So, and it's changed a lot. You used to have a sommelier at almost every fine dining restaurant. Now, most of the time, it's the beverage director who's also the sommelier because of budgets. But hopefully the staff is trained. And I think one of the first places you start as is telling them, I usually like Albarino, or I usually like Sauvignon Blanc from this place, is sometimes an easier way to get the server or the manager to be able to get to what on that list you're going to like. You know, what can we compare this to? I don't think it matters price-wise. I would always order a bottle. And I'm saying this because even if you're the only person drinking, one thing that's special about the state of Illinois, which there's a lot of things special about the state of Illinois, is that you can, if you're in a restaurant, I don't know if everybody knows this, if you're in a restaurant and you see a cool bottle that you want to have, because you're going to spend less money on a bottle than a by the glass situation, they have these sealable bags and they can put it in a bag and you can take it home with you. That's the law here. And you can't do that. You can't do that in New York. And that's a pretty special thing to be able to be, I can try this bottle of wine and I can bring it home with me so you don't feel like you're taking this chance. You know, if you're doing it by the glass and it's a great place, you know, and somebody wants white and somebody wants red, that makes sense. But that glass price is going to be so much more. And depending on the restaurant, you don't know how long the bottle's been open. So I always try to say, go for a bottle and go for, this is what I've drank in the past and I've liked. But I'm going to give you one other tip because this is the most annoying thing to people who are hospitality professionals. I only drink Cabernet Sauvignon. Okay. Cabernet Sauvignon from where? Try to know which Cabernet Sauvignon you like from where, because it's very different depending where it's grown, who the winemaker is. And so even Pinot Noir, if you drink a Oregon Pinot Noir, that's going to be very different than California, than French Pinot Noir, depending on where it's from. So I think always write down. It's also documenting, you know, us as sommeliers, we're constantly, and wine professionals, we're constantly studying. We're constantly having to taste different things to get our palate trained to have more of an open mind. If you constantly just drink the same exact thing all the time, you're not going to have an open palate and it's not going to be exciting to you. You know, if you just want to have that one thing all the time, your palate's just going to be trained to that. So I would also always say to your server, I like this usually. I usually drink, you know, a Chilean Pinot Noir, but I'd like to get adventurous today. Let's try a grape that I can't pronounce that you think that I would like. And that's going to be so fun for them that they're going to like put such care into looking at what you're eating and picking out that bottle.
What if you don't want to spend a ton of money? How do you approach that?
I think you're just really realistic with your server or the manager. I want to be in the $52 range, and this is what I usually drink, and this is what I'm planning to eat. You know, your food can really change how a wine tastes. You can have a completely different experience if you're having a wine on its own than with food. You know, it should be part of your conversation with your server or the GM or whoever's the one who knows the wine list.
Now, we have some kind of standard go-tos. I know if we're looking at maybe like champagne, everybody's heard of Veuve, everybody's heard of Dom Perignon, Cristal. But are there other things on the menu that sometimes we go for the obvious that are often just as good, but maybe they don't cost you as much? And how do you figure that out?
Well, again, I would say if you don't know the brand, that's probably a good thing. You know, For champagne right now, I think more people are getting to know grower champagne, which can be talked about, and we can talk about grower cava. It's what you guys started with tonight. Grower champagne means the same people that are farming the land are making the wine. And so you're not having these grapes travel all over. The big houses might buy grapes from one producer. They might buy grapes. They might truck them in from all over the place. And you're just going to have a less quality experience. There might be more chemicals involved. And so I would always ask if I'm buying champagne in a restaurant, do you have any grower champagne? Do you have any? I would look and see also, do you have something that's more interesting that has different grapes than the usual champagne has, or different grape makeup? So those are some things that are kind of fun to try. And usually when a wine professional in a restaurant is passionate about something, it's usually good. But I think that it's, really writing down the things that you liked, because if you remember the things that you liked, you can also pass that information on to your beverage professional.
But grower champagne. Okay.
Grower champagne. We had grower cava tonight because it's the same family that farms the land, makes the wine right there. It was a place that you went and saw, Navarone. And it's more special, it's more organic. Also, I would say vintage. Vintage is when it's all the grapes from that year or farmed that year. Non-vintage means they can have, something from 2021 and something from 2023 and put in a blend. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means there's a different freshness to it, and there's not as much of a, complete exacting thing. The other thing is that things should not always taste exactly the same. If you have a wine that tastes exactly the same from vintage to vintage, that's a problem, because the weather changes from vintage to vintage. From year to year, the weather changes. There's different, I think we see winemakers sometimes that you're like, you'll taste something they made 10 years ago, and you taste something they made, 2 years ago, and you're like, wow, they've really developed into this great winemaker. So don't give up on winemakers. Keep trying what they're doing. They're artists. Think about it, going and seeing a painter change from what he did as a young man to what he's done as, as he progresses.
I love that you encourage people to be adventurous, because I used to only drink red, and now I love white, thanks to you, to try different things. And one of the things we didn't talk about that I want to mention, because I think it's kind of cool, is Olé Obrigado. You guys are a carbon neutral wine company. Explain that and why the consumer should care about that.
Yeah, so, they've shown, so we document everything that we do with a NGO, our profit organization called Carbon Hero. And so every year we document things from, printing, tasting maps, to getting the wine here, to my travel. And then we fund, or the owners fund, 3 projects that offset our emissions. So say we create a certain amount of emissions with our shipping and all of our activities in the market. They fund 3 projects that are on our website, including a geothermal plant. And so we are basically making sure that we are not putting out more emissions that we are taking from the land. So they're showing that this is working. Big airlines like Delta are about to do this. And this is one way that we can actually try to turn around what we've destroyed in our earth.
Yeah, and I know that's important to you too. So it all kind of comes together. I mean, with you being an advocate of not only trying to help people, but I know that that's really important to you, working for a company that is actually trying to do something. Because are they the only ones in the wine industry doing this right now? No, we're constantly looking. We're not sure if we were the first, but I think there's a couple that are doing it in the wine industry now. And it really makes it like, you're drinking more local, right? So, I think everybody needs to be held accountable and look through the projects. When someone says they're go be accountable for us, be transparent, look on our website, look at the projects that we're funding, and see if that's important to you. But I think in the same way we think about what we want to eat and put in our body, we have to think that wine is food. It is an ingredient in our meals and our social gatherings. And, it's important that the wineries and the vineyards are doing things sustainable, because if not, we're not going to have wine in 20 years. Look at what's happening in California. Look at wildfires. And, we need to take care of our earth for many reasons to be able to continue with this journey. So I always like to ask people, where do you see yourself going forward now? Because you've pretty much done it all. You've worked at the Michelin stars. You've helped him to get the Michelin stars. You've been the restaurant manager. You've been the owner. Now you're an ambassador. Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? What do you hope?
I mean, I hope to still be always representing very amazing winemakers and even distillers, and keep bringing things and challenging people on trying things that they've never tried before. And, also I think mentorship is really important. I think I had to figure out how to become a wine professional. It's not like they're like, here's like wine university and you can go there. It's not like that. There's a couple different ways that you can do it, and it's really hard to access. And, we're lucky to be doing a project with Bronzeville Winery right now where they have a foundation. We're producing their wines for them. They're a restaurant and cultural hub in the South Side in Bronzeville. And we've just produced 4 wines that they picked out. And money's going to the foundation that is going to help people that don't usually have access to wine training, front of house training, to be able to have that access. So when I was trying to figure this out, I was running a resort in Martha's Vineyard after I had been 14, 15 years in nightlife, and I was burnt out. And I was like, this is perfect. My gig's from April to the end of October. Basically, at that time, the Court of Master Sommeliers, they're like, okay, you want to do this? There's a 1-day class and 1-day test. And then when you study for your second level, here's a reading list. Go out and taste a bunch of wine. And we had to figure out, now it's a little bit easier. There's more tasting groups online, but I had to figure out, I bought all these books, and then how to get the wines to taste. It's really hard if you're not running a program that's expensive. You have to pass a blind taste test of 3 wines. How are you going to have the money to buy all these wines to know what Burgundy tastes from this vintage and what this champagne tastes like? And even there's a couple spirits questions. So how do we make hospitality professionals for the future? And I think that's by making sure that everybody has access. The POC community, people on the South Side and the North Side have access to these kind of classes and, study groups, and are able to buy the wines. The way I was able to do it is that I was a buyer for a major resort. And so I would, if one of my sales reps would come by and they'd be like, hey, I'm going to put this by the glass, but can you pull these 3 samples for me? I need to study these over the winter. And so by the time we closed the resort, I had 6 boxes of wine, and I would just, it would get dark at about 4:30 in the winter on Martha's Vineyard because it's an island. And I studied all winter and read all the books, but there was no study group, then. And now it's a lot better. There's different organizations to do it through, like the WSET. There's a lot of more study groups. There's a lot of things you can do online, which the pandemic helped with too.
So what's the best glass of wine you've ever had? Do you remember it?
That's like picking your favorite
I know,
daughter.
but you had to have a moment. You had to have had a moment or two where you were like, whoa.
I mean, it's all my winemakers are gonna probably listen to this. So this is I think there's a couple people that I think are so brilliant. I mean, some of the wines we're tasting tonight, the Massanitas, Joanna Massanita, Antonio Massanita. I think her white wine is so delicate and lovely, but still has minerality. And Luis Sierra is making the best wines on the planet right now. His Xisto Cru Branco. We were able to go have dinner with him. He cooked us dinner and taste all his wines. And you guys are going to taste one of his reds tonight. But really, Rodri Mendez, the king of Albarino from Forjas del Salnés, I think those wines like almost make me weep. They're so good. He makes 23 different single vineyard bottlings of Albarino, and they're all very different, and they all have ageability, and it's amazing to watch each year what he does.
Wow. I want to weep. How about you guys? That sounds incredible.
He just got 100 points. There's only been 2 Albarinos that ever got 100 points, and he just got one of them for one of his wines.
Very good. Well, Brooke, keep doing what you're doing. And, I think you represent not only your community, but so many other people who kind of feel intimidated by this industry. You've done so much in your career, and I see so many more wonderful things coming. So thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say something because the first time I got to, all of a sudden they said, Sylvia Perez coming to interview on the Riverwalk. And I was like, really? Like, I mean, Sylvia is a Chicago icon, a cheerleader of Chicago, but also an amazing supporter of other women. And I have to say that is like such a great quality, because I think all the women in your life who come with challenges in whatever industry, whether it's, media or hospitality, you're always there to give us like a kind word. And
thank you.
And you've been really there for me, and I really appreciate it.
Well, back at you, my friend. Love you, my friend.
Thank you. Let's drink some wine.